this video, and this has been the history of the finding of the strange form, and then I'm going to editing. Says, um, I found this format from in each of these books that I'm doing to get one long book to tells the true story. Um, okay, from the Hebrew text, I should say that. Um, this I added here. I had it as 3 lines, and I got a little bit smarter and figured out when I was reading them as I'm putting them together. As you can see, this is from Numbers 32, and the one above it, number 30, Numbers 26, part 2. So all these pieces have been jumbled together, and now that the story is coming clear, then this text needs to be put in. Try to make these videos 45 minutes or 40 to 45 minutes long. That way I can stick them into a filter to clean up my audio because I have asthma. So a lot of times you'll hear me breathing or sucking in a lot of air. And I'm just trying to get rid of that in the future when people use these as to get an understanding of what I did for each and every word. Here I'm changing the word other to false god. Other would imply that there is. So this is just a false god needs to be put in here, or false creator at this time. These were added. Now you can see I'm into Deuteronomy. This also will be put in the description box probably very soon. So if you come here later, then you should check any of them. I'm gonna go back and do the description box. Right now, if you want to see a video that the bishop calls the way the church fathers taught Jesus as a myth, and they consider Jesus a myth and not a real being. That video I just put in the URL link as well in the description box. I don't think there's important to go over why I added all these little words here. But if you are here new, I italicized them so you can see I did this before. I added these words before. So everything is coded that the upright words are text that I started with, or I changed that there was a word here and needed to be more truthfully to be said, to be more accurately said or read. Wilderness becomes hills. Wilderness, over time I figured out, is the between a desert and the forestry, this blending of this area. This is known as the wilderness. So in the text, that the way I'm going to describe it. End of the salty, this is the salty lake, or people would know it as the Dead Sea, but they didn't have that at that time, those words. It would have been the salty lake. River for Egypt, yeah, I got rid of this, which is different because it's describing a certain area, so it needed to be there. Let's see. Yeah, it's kind of giving the description of the land. The word things to or. Is uh, when they say to have sex with a so-called female goddess. And the text does say in their forehead is harlotry. So that's why the word harlot is being removed from here to mean a whore, that we would know today as, and I'm thinking they would have had a very similar word to that long ago. Leaders to kings? Yes. Two kings east of Jordan. Uh, so changed. The intent is that they're just more a leader. They're a king of a group of people, and that means that there's like thousands, maybe even tens of thousands of people. Had to change the word Israel to tribes uh, because it was specifically getting the word to them and not just everybody. Because there was the king that could have done this, but he usually left it to, passed it out, and our creator is speaking. This is when our creator is speaking. I have all capital letters and purple. I think the color actually on the screen is violet, according to uh, the way it's set up for Microsoft Word, but the intent is to be purple, tied with royalty and the color in the sky. I decided that stones are going to be referred to something that are hand sized, rocks are going to be larger. So that's the difference because these rocks are going to be um, placed in the tent for meeting with him. This needed a lot of correction to be uh, better, which means I didn't edit it as good as I should have. Because a lot of times when I was doing this, it was uh, one verse after another verse after another verse, and I did go over them again, but now you can see I'm getting into these are going to be set up for the final text. Leaders to guard saw. Yeah, when you have a gate for the city there, their leaders saw them. They had to have the guards because when I'm putting these together, the story has leaders wouldn't have been out there by that area, is in other words. So it needed to be more truthful. It's easy to understand. Invoice our messengers. And again, this is what I'm doing to help 12-year-olds read the book. They would understand messengers before they would the word invoice. So I'm truly aiming at the text to be read by them because myself, I started in my 11th day. I don't believe in birthdays, but at that time, um, that is what I did. And it took, and I did go to it and read it every day. And it took me a little bit more than a full year. So I know the difficulties that they would have. And now it's cleaned up, easier to follow. It's in order. Leaders turn to elders. Again, text here. Users of the forest and diggers of well. Okay. And they remained in the, this was when, yes, when you understand this story, I needed an ending of what happened to them other than just diggers of well for wells, um, because they became our servants and they served Wybe. So, or Yava, I got to start learning to say Yava. more than what I've been doing in other videos. Uh, in a lot of these names of places like this, there's going to be maps, but I don't think I'm going to have them released as soon as possible, but they will get there in time. Judged, Joshua judged. This was tied to um, our Creator wanted judges over them, okay, and not kings. All these words I've added, I don't know why. This is the past. These lines will be taken out later. So, and just like this is how I noted West Manessa and had to make a reference to it, what it actually means. That'll probably still stay in the text. Elders to lawyer because it's state their case. And this would have been the lawyers would have been doing this, not the elders. I got so much wiser when I started rereading and looking at the importance of the overall text. Each time it gets cleaned up, it becomes able to read smoother and more. I try to visualize everything. That helps me sure the text is truest as possible. I don't think much to discuss. This is going to be the footnote that will be in there because I think I might even change the how many years. I'm still debating on that number uh, because if you really study how bad the book is now, Joshua is the last one that we actually hear about and not anybody else. And then all of a sudden we're into uh, Eli is like the high priest who's going to become judge over the land, and then Samuel is going to become a prophet. But there's years, and in those years that are hidden, uh, do have the story of how Eli's time that they're already divided into two different nations, but they aren't described as nations. They just got together that way. And he dictated and gave them. So, like I'm saying, I'm reducing. Needs to be close. I want. We have a hard time being physically near and physically close, but I felt the word close was a better sense of word here. Right brings to attendance. Uh, these guys uh, are Eli's sons, but at this time, because he was the highest priest, then he had his sons as the assistants or attendants that would help in things needed to be done at the highest priest, which um, never thought of, just popped into my head. Keep that as a note. When I see it, I'll remember it. If I can something here that's and is that if Eli's the high priest, he needs an attendant, but who's operating that tribe's ministering for that tribe's altar. And it seems like these two guys were later, they're going to be killed because they weren't doing it correctly. It's honoring the offering. Yeah, I wouldn't tell just now. But, yeah, prophet wasn't sent to him, an angel was sent to him. That is a change because right now there's really no prophet around here. So it would have been, and Eli understands what our creator's voice sounds like because when um he talked to our creator in his tent for meeting. So actually he abandoned the tent for meeting at some time because there was separation of, so it means they fell into um dishonoring our creator, so he wasn't appearing in the tent, and then all of a sudden Eli, he is he was starting to receive our creator's voice. So I'm saying it was an angel that was sent. An angel was sent and telling them that in dishonoring me, your sons are. So I've got to really look at that again or go through all the verses in the story. Those days are coming days. See here. True, but I needed to make it come about. They were true, but they came about is more better than the word true. Two words for one word. You do this with a hyphen, so if you see hyphens in other places, that's what it means or why I did that. Their lords called for the priests and dividers. Yes, yeah, because it's a different time, and I don't think, and that was what I was understanding when I was reading it. I could have made it like judges, and their judges called for their priests and diviners. Because they're evil at that time. There's different um cities that have these judges in them. Um, there's no more one refuge city, but they still existed. But for like communities, you got to realize the Levites were still being assigned as the judges and lawyers. And when I use the word lords here, it would have meant those that were of higher power within these areas that were uh, wanted to say, let's call them and find out what to do. And this is actually um, not Hebrews. This would be the Philistines or what they're doing here. But I'm trying to understand how to use specific words for whatever. And I'm trying to separate the word leaders, I guess, as for their city. So that's going to be one that I know that I've got that I gotta look at after before I put it into put this into print, which is probably gonna take a few years after this. I don't have the money to do it right now. Keeping with the words Lord. To take from myself, yeah. And this is gonna be our creek. This is Samuel talking here at this time. It's gonna happen because they, our creator, stop having judges. Uh, King, see here, so yeah, hopefully still good. So I made it a treaty that's more important, I think, of what they would have done, not just a promise with us. Uh, we would try people known as the Amorites, which would have been descendants from Japheth, who got to the side and following our Creator. We have a different because the story is that they really are loose. They might have had commanders, but they still kind of not paying attention to what Samuel was doing. It would only been those that was pretty much, can I say this, wanting to be obedient, to partake and try to reestablish when they're fighting over other people, but they are trying to establish a king here. So I didn't think, uh, because it's referring to Saul's uh, men that were going to battle. So it would have been to the army, I think. Again, it's a tough one. Is changing the correct location because Shiloh is in Benjamin, not in Judah. Shield carrier or a bearer. The word bearer is used because the bearer, from what I understand, also helped the king to put on his armor. Then he put his on, and then he was stood like before the king to protect the king probably from stray arrows that he would see coming in with his shield, or to allow the king to fight uh, when they attacked, when they come around his shielder. So I wanted to make sure that it was a bearer because it's more than just what he's doing is carrying it. See, I had a shield bearer. Those words, I realized there was too many here in this verse, and they really aren't needed at this time. Hebrews became Israelis, excuse me. The story is that they pursued them, bringing east of Egypt to south of Israel, and that's the nation Israel when they're divided, and then it's uh, lowercase and bold, meaning they aren't really respective to our Creator yet. They're kind of gone away. They aren't good yet. This is the nation Israel. And that's another note that I gotta make on how many different ways I used one word to mean certain things. All capital letters with no uh, boldness is when this nation Israel to eat them out. Then when they got into the lane, um, it was more or less, I used it as bold uh, on slant side. So when the text is read, I really tried to really make sure that the person was reading and understood the difference of the text, because sometimes there's going to be laws that were given in the Sinai, and then later, um, as they went through, they kept adding laws. So turn to change from following my command. Yeah. So Saul being disobedient, so he's rejected yours as his kings, meaning he's going to assign David as a king. But the thing here is Saul was hoping that his son's son become kings afterwards, and he disobeyed our Creator. And Samuel just told him that your ruling will end, and YB will appoint, or Yahweh will appoint, uh, seek out, he's going to appoint. As you can see, this part here is in the middle of a lot of text that got jumbled around. It was just a sliver. So did that, and then it's become more clear to be able to edit correctly. Chose a king. This is the representation. Like, notice this is a 3 verse and this is a 4 verse. I didn't want to add a 4 verse into here and make something up, so I just left it as it is. So that's one of the very few times, but I want to make sure that people understood that I know that it's a 3 verse here. Just like this, it goes from a 4 verse, and then when it changes stories, it goes to a 3 verse. So that's one of the times I mentioned that it starts appearing when I have more parts to the story, as how they started writing differently to help the reader or the speaker understand the story and quickly search for what was going on in the scrolls. And did later make books. Scrolls would have been into the years of the promised land, but then after that, after they got established, then they could have changed over to a book. And I'm not sure of exactly if it took them 100 years or what, because there's 200 years missing, 250 maybe years missing, and I'm pretty sure that would have been there as well, because it's an important subject to understand. Decided this how tall Goliath is going to be. Cubic is going to be 18 inches, and then why the side on that is because when you see 18, or the tent for our Creator was made 20 cubics by 30 cubics, and then when they made it out of blocks, these blocks needed a number link to make sure that you could construct it, the house, and this number of 20 cubics by 40 cubics is actually the inside dimension, and the blocks have to fit around it. That's why I can tell you what the size of the door is. Um, yeah, and like I said, some of these things I was doing sheath on his shoulders. I thought it was his waist. Um, because he's going to go out there in the battle, and it wouldn't have been like you see the Asians where they would had it carry it on their back. I don't think that was um fighting the way it would be for fighting actually in battle. It has to be something quicker. So grains, I'm not sure, so I made it cuts of cheese. Um, this would have been something more filling. Roasted grains. It could have been, but I wanted to make sure that there was actually something to go with the bread because this is made out of grains. So I said it's got to be cuts of cheese and bread, and they used oil as well. So, um, and they used to dip their bread in oil. Okay, and then they would add cuts of cheese or dried meats, even fish to go with their meal. I just decided it would be cuts of cheese because they're going to share with each other when they're out there in the battlefield. So, what do you got? What do you got? And I'll trade you for that. I'm getting tired of eating this. So, but it's also an understanding that how the family would support the troops. A lot of that, uh, and, uh, it's a good way for us to understand what how the other kingdoms around there when they did battle that they would have people standing off to the side watching the battle. So they would have been like from the family to see what's going on. And then maybe if their uh, sons were injured or end up dying, they were the ones to come in and help them off the field and have them regroup or to be buried. Needed the word promised here to fill the two words in here. So got rid of this major word. So stabbed. I was like, stabbed because cut. I figured that doesn't say it as descriptive. I grabbed uh, his beard. This is David talking about the lion that he killed, and he just didn't cut his neck. He would have stabbed his neck. Okay, because you're too close to sit there and say, "I'm going to cut it." You're just going to fight. You're going to stab it. So I'm trying to make sure that like I said, the words that I'm putting in um, match how I was thinking out what this really, whether it was or how I would have battled or how I would have done it. And to sit there and cut, that isn't as fast as stabbing. So keep an eye on time. I'm trying to make sure these aren't that long. It's starting to bother me. Body. Using the word flesh as your skin. I want to make sure it was your body at this time. Flesh sometimes is referred to the muscles. So this word is getting rid of, and I'm getting more descriptive with the wording. I think I am. This was like the word here was in the text. My. Yeah. I used it this way, and then I decided, I'd get rid of that, and Saul said to him, my and it's kinda you can see I added it from here to here, and daughter, um, uh, you you get these here, and then again, 3 4 story is changing to 3-verse story because he's talking about giving him his daughter. So again, there's these stories that were when I found them, I didn't understand why they read so well together, but it did take me uh, some time to actually go over a lot of books to see that finally become okay. My guess is right that that is how they wrote. I was at first thinking they were different writers. Because when you find them, I was pulling them apart and putting the stories together with 3-verse and 4-verse words, even though that helped a lot. But then when they went together, they went like this, and it went 3 to 4 with the story read. So, yeah, it was a long time chasing to understand specifically how they wrote. It needs to be people afterwards, so it's kinda like speaking to the descendants of the established kings until he dies. So this was, Saul being angry with Jonathan. He didn't understand why his dad wanted to kill him. So it's kinda like, neither will your descendants be established as kings. So he must die until he dies because Saul is now aware that David has been anointed. It's like, I wanted to say, like speaking of the text is about changed this guy's name. I got sure I did that. This is text because he does refer to this story. I tried to change the names all over the place to make it easier to read, easier to say, and I still can't pronounce some of them. So, but I tried. I tried. Maybe in the future I will change all the names differently again. Explained those before. So some of these I'm not gonna keep saying the same thing of what I did. I gird yourself, strap on your sword. I think that would have been you know, this from now this story, you know, at this time, you would speak in text because it's still all pretty sure it changed, but it's just assuming that they're dead and all those and stuff like that. Meaning, seeing that this is not at that time of the passing over, uh, Green's passing over celebration. This was at a time when they were just shearing the sheep, bringing them in to say, this is, uh, summer's coming up and they need to be sheared. So this is what would happen. And then he would also distribute, because I don't think he would just give them away, but people that would pay for him to say, okay, you're coming here, you want this, okay, pay me, I'll butcher you up a ram, and probably sell it to many families that way. I'm gonna find a place to say I'm done, but I'll stop right here, and then I will pick up again soon here. So